Greetings fellow collectors and gamers. This video shows special modifications I made myself to house rule my vintage Destroy Death Star game using Dungeons & Dragons dice. I show regular gameplay in the collectible games link at the end. I use the D&D dice with advantage-disadvantage rules depending on how many X-Wings are in your squadron and whether the Millennium Falcon is present. The video is broken down into Battle Darth Vader with 20-sided dice, battling TIE Fighters using 10-sided dice, movement using 12, 10, or 8-sided die depending on how many X-Wings you have in your squadron, Death Star countdown to destroy Rebel base, using a 10-sided die to count down how many times the exhaust port is missed, and cards and dice ideas. So enjoy this unique take on a vintage action board game. 1, 2, 3, and he wins the game. If your X-Wing squadron is next to Darth Vader, and Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon are present, you roll for advantage. Darth Vader rolls 1d20, he got a 12, and you roll 2d20s at advantage. A 20 and a 5 beats a 12. So you defeat Darth Vader. You didn't necessarily defeat him, you knocked him out of orbit. Go ahead and roll the black d20 for your next move. A 10. If you rolled a 19, he'd end up here. If you roll a natural 20, go to Death Star entry. If you're next to Darth Vader, no matter how many X-Wings you have, and Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon are not present, you roll against Vader at disadvantage. So Vader rolls the black d20, he gets a 15. You roll 2 d20s, a 16 and a 13. You're at disadvantage, so 13 is less than 15. You use the regular rules and go back to Rebel base at the start, but do not gain or lose any X-Wings. If you only have one X-Wing next to Darth Vader and the Millennium Falcon is not present, roll the black d20, you get a 10, and then Vader rolls 2 d20s for advantage. A 19 and an 18. Even the lower roll beats a 10. So you lose to Darth Vader, go back to start, and do not gain nor lose any X-Wings. Blue Squadron has 3 X-Wings next to 1 TIE Fighter. So the TIE Fighter will roll a single black d10. He gets a 6. If you have more than 1 X-Wing in your squadron, roll 2 d10 for advantage and use the higher of the 2 rolls. This is percentile die, and 10 means 1. The highest is 5, but the TIE Fighter has 6, so you lose an X-Wing. If either one of those or more was higher than 6, you would defeat the X-Wing. In a similar fashion, if you only have 1 X-Wing, the TIE Fighter rolls the black d10. In that case, he got a 2. You still roll 2 d10s, but you take the lower of the roll, which is a 1. And the TIE Fighter defeats the X-Wing. He has to go back to the Rebel base, but he gets all of his X-Wings back to start the next turn. For movement, if you have a full 3 X-Wing squadron, use the d12. If you have 2 X-Wings in your squadron, roll the d10 for movement. If you have 1 X-Wing in your squadron, use the d8. If you're in the Death Star trench, no matter how many X-Wings you have, start with the black d6 if you're farther than 6 spaces away from the exhaust port. When you're within 6 spaces, use the red d6. 1, 2, 3, and he wins the game. It's rare you destroy Death Star that quickly, so every time anyone misses the exhaust port, take a 10-sided die to count down to 10 rounds. Set it in the corner, and every time someone misses the exhaust port, move it down 1 number, so you know how many times, down to 0, that the total number of X-Wing squadrons can miss, and then Death Star destroys Rebel base and everybody loses. Use a D4 to rotate Death Star. In that case, green is next to the Death Star entry, so he would start his next turn there. So especially if you play D&D, it's not that complicated, but it makes it a little more interesting, especially if you like to roll lots of dice. And rolling a natural 20 is always exciting. You can also draw up cards or index cards, and anytime you land on a negative event, you can pick a card, and it randomizes what negative event it is. And maybe there's a few positive events, just to randomize the game. You could have TIE fighters more or less dangerous by having cards that have ranges of numbers. And you could have TIE fighter cards that have armor class like D&D. So if you're fighting a TIE fighter and you have 2 X-Wings or more, you roll for advantage. Let's say that TIE fighter had an armor class of 12. You would defeat the TIE fighter. Now let's say you only have 1 X-Wing, so that would be disadvantage. 10 and a 16 is pretty good for disadvantage. So that same TIE fighter with an armor class of 12 is more than the lower roll of disadvantage, which is a 10. So your X-Wing would lose in that case. The black D20 is from this D&D board game system. I'm going to do a video showing gameplay using pieces from all 4 games in the system. I just ordered Temple of Elemental Evil. I have a lot of D&D and Star Wars miniatures I can show you, including the starter sets and scenario books. There's some really nice sculpts that can also be used with my Star Wars Epic Duels game that I'll show. So I hope you enjoyed this creative gaming effort. If you try any of these house rules, you can link to or embed the video. Check out my playlist of Star Wars and other collectibles. Please subscribe and click send me updates so you don't miss another interesting video. Once again, thanks for watching.